Did you know that some of Hollywood's biggest stars couldn't stand Robert Redford? Although he was considered one of the great heartthrobs of classic cinema, an icon of the 1970s, and an Academy Award winner, the reality is that behind that perfect smile and gentlemanly image was a complex, reserved man who was often unbearable to his co-workers. Today you'll discover the untold stories of 10 Hollywood figures who secretly or publicly came to hate Robert Redford. 1. Steve McQueen. The rivalry between Robert Redford and Steve McQueen is one of Hollywood's most notorious. In the late 1960s, studios wanted to pair McQueen and Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. McQueen was at his peak, nicknamed the King of Cool, and demanded that his name appear first in the credits. But Redford, still an up-and-comer, refused to take second place. McQueen, offended, dropped out of the project, and the role went to Redford, who alongside Newman formed one of cinema's most iconic duos. For McQueen, it was a humiliation. In private, he called him the pretty blonde and insisted he was nothing more than a press-inflated actor. The wound never healed. For years, he refused to work with him and, according to those close to him, felt jealous because Hollywood began to see Redford as a new Newman, pushing McQueen aside. The feud was so real that at parties and social events, McQueen would deliberately ignore him or make disparaging remarks in front of other actors. 2. Dustin Hoffman. In 1976, Redford and Dustin Hoffman starred together in All the President's Men, the film about the Watergate scandal. What seemed like a perfect pairing on screen was, in reality, a shoot full of tension. Hoffman, a method actor used to improvising and dominating scenes, constantly clashed with Redford's obsession with precision and control. The clashes were so intense that more than once the crew had to intervene to calm them down. Hoffman complained that Redford was too rigid, too worried about his image, accusing him of lacking emotional commitment. Redford, for his part, saw Hoffman as chaotic and egocentric, though they never openly admitted it in public. Interviews years later revealed the tension. Hoffman once said Redford was impenetrable, impossible to know, while Redford merely described him as intense. Although the film was an absolute success and is now considered a classic, both actors avoided working together again. For many, what was remembered wasn't only the story of Watergate, but the story of two Hollywood giants who couldn't coexist on the same set. 3. Barbra Streisand. In 1973, Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand starred in The Way We Were, one of the most memorable romantic films of the decade. On screen, their chemistry seemed magical. She, the passionate, idealistic activist; he, the handsome and distant writer. The result was a box office hit and a genre classic. But behind the cameras, their relationship was the opposite. Streisand felt frustrated by Redford's coldness. She, who usually sought closeness and camaraderie with her co-stars, described him as distant, reserved, never letting his guard down. In later interviews, she admitted that although she admired him as an actor, it was like kissing a wall. Redford rarely improvised, always maintaining an air of perfection, and it drove her crazy. The problems didn't end there. Streisand, used to being in control of her projects, faced a Redford who not only demanded respect as an actor, but also gave opinions on directing, dialogue, and even lighting. On several occasions, the production team had to mediate to avoid open confrontations. Although both parted amicably after the film, they never worked together again. Years later, Streisand confessed that this emotional distance was the real reason they never reunited on screen. 4. Gene Hackman. The filming of The Electric Horseman, 1979, brought together two intense, hot-tempered actors, Robert Redford and Gene Hackman. What seemed like a safe bet turned into a battlefield. Hackman, famous for his explosive character and direct style, grew frustrated with Redford's obsessive perfectionism. Redford would request scenes be repeated over and over until the perfect take was achieved, while Hackman considered such pursuit a waste of time. Arguments became frequent, and on more than one occasion, Hackman raised his voice on set, even calling him a pretty-faced egomaniac in front of crew members. The tension was so great that director Sidney Pollack was forced to halt filming to calm things down. Over time, Hackman never hid that Redford was not one of his favorite co-stars. In interviews, he was more discreet, but often dropped remarks like, "Not everyone understands that cinema isn't a photo shoot," or "Some only care about how they look on screen. Everyone everyone knew who he meant. 5. Meryl Streep. In 1985, Redford shared the screen with Meryl Streep in Out of Africa. In the film, their chemistry is undeniable, a passionate love story set against the landscapes of Kenya, but off-camera, the reality was far less romantic. Streep, one of the most dedicated and sensitive actresses of her generation, confessed years later that working with Redford was difficult. She described him as so reserved that it was like acting with a wall. She sought emotional connection, improvisation, vulnerability. Redford, on the other hand, appeared rigid, image-obsessed, with a much more controlled acting style. Despite everything, Streep never directly attacked him. She always spoke respectfully, but made clear it wasn't a pleasant experience. While she enjoyed improvisation, Redford rarely deviated from the script. The distance was evident to many on set. While Streep spent time with the crew, Redford preferred to keep to himself, reading in his trailer or rehearsing scenes alone. Though the film was a huge success, crowned with several Oscars, Streep never accepted another project alongside Redford. The experience, though professional, wasn't enjoyable, and she hinted at it more than once with subtle comments. 6. Paul Newman. At first glance, Robert Redford and Paul Newman seemed like Hollywood's perfect pair. Together they starred in two unforgettable classics, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, and The Sting, 1973. Their on-screen chemistry was so evident they earned the nickname the Golden Duo of cinema. But behind the public's idealized friendship, there were tensions never fully revealed. Newman, already a major star when Redford arrived on the scene, suspected that the young actor sought to equal him in fame and prominence. During salary negotiations for The Sting, the tension peaked. Redford demanded a fee nearly equal to Newman's, something the veteran actor found presumptuous. According to insiders, Newman privately called him the calculating blonde, implying he saw Redford as too cold in business. Although they never became open enemies, their relationship was marked by this silent competition. Newman was charismatic and generous, Redford reserved and perfectionist. The difference in styles meant that after The Sting, they never worked together again. Over the years, both spoke well of each other publicly, but the sense of an underlying rivalry remained. 7. Jane Fonda. Robert Redford and Jane Fonda worked together several times, beginning with Barefoot in the Park, 1967, a romantic comedy that made them one of cinema's most beloved pairs. However, what audiences saw as pure chemistry, Fonda experienced as a difficult challenge. In later interviews, Jane Fonda admitted that Redford was a difficult actor. According to her, on set he was too serious, with zero sense of humor. Fonda, who enjoyed improvisation and laughing between takes, found herself with a distant Redford who rarely broke character. Though over the years they made other films together, such as The Electric Horseman, 1979, and Our Souls at Night, 2017, Fonda never hid that their professional relationship wasn't easy. In a 2017 interview while promoting their last film together, Jane joked that Redford was a bad kisser, and although she said it playfully, the truth is that since the 1960s, she had described him as inaccessible, too concerned with keeping his image impeccable. The reality is that although they achieved great results on screen, behind the scenes there was coldness and distance. 8. Warren Beatty. If there was anyone who saw Robert Redford as a direct rival, it was Warren Beatty. The two competed not only for roles, but also for the image of Hollywood's intellectual heartthrob. Beatty, known for his competitive character and womanizing reputation, saw Redford as a threat to his reign. In the 1970s, when both were at their peak, rivalry rumors were constant. Both were actors, producers, and political activists, and they were constantly compared in the press. Beatty often mocked Redford in private gatherings, calling him the actor who never smiles. According to witnesses, at one award ceremony both crossed paths and Beatty refused to greet him, creating an awkward silence among those present. The clash was not only personal, but also artistic. Beatty opted for risky roles and projects with clear political messages, while Redford preferred a more sober image, though equally committed to social causes. This difference made them rivals in a Hollywood where both wanted the same throne, that of the serious, attractive, socially conscious actor.